So I'd like to welcome everyone to our monthly Bossier Chamber of Commerce Chamber Chat with the president, which that's my title. So with us, it's not with me, but it is with you all, our chamber members here at the Bossier Chamber of Commerce. So I'm Lisa Johnson, and I am the president, the director here at the Bossier Chamber, and it has been really exciting and good to be able to host these monthly chamber chats during COVID. We were doing them weekly during the original shutdown, and then we went to monthly as we became more used to our new normal. And so today I've asked Congressman Mike Johnson, who has been a regular guest with us, to join us again today because of everyone is, and we need to know in the business community, what is happening and what can we expect in the for phase 4. And because we can't operate as a business community with uncertainty and not knowing what the future holds for us. And then as the weekend transpired, the president did some executive orders. So hopefully, Congressman, you'll be able to give us a little bit of insight to that. So Congressman Mike Johnson, we welcome you here with us today, and we are so glad that you are out of quarantine and working in your Bossier City office. I know you're eager to get back up to the DC office, and just a few more little rules and housekeeping notes is that for those that are participating with us today, if you have any questions for the Congressman, if you would please put those in the chat box. And if you're watching with us on Facebook Live, if you'll put those in the comments, we will get those questions to the Congressman and so that he can answer them, and we'll get to as many of those as we can today. So again, Congressman Mike Johnson, we welcome you, and tell us everything that you know. Welcome, Congressman.
Hey, thanks so much, Lisa, and it's good to be with y'all again. This is my first afternoon, literally. I just got out of my medical quarantine for 14 days, ordered by the House physician because I had dinner with Congressman Louis Gohmert of East Texas 2 Mondays ago, and he tested positive the following Wednesday morning. So I called the House physician and asked if I should come get tested. They said, "Oh, it's much worse, Congressman. You have to go into 14 days of quarantine." So I literally had to get a car, sneak out of the building. I was in my office in Washington and drive a car home. And I've been in a travel trailer behind the house for the last 2 weeks. So I'm delighted to be with you. First time to be in the office in 2 weeks here in the Bossier City office. And I am really glad. It's telling me my connection is unstable. So that's just my luck, but we'll soldier on, do the best we can. So look, the big thing on everybody's mind, Lisa, as you know, is phase 4. And we know, everybody in Congress knows, the president knows, all of us know that there's more to do. Now, we have to remember in context where we are exactly in dealing with this unprecedented pandemic, this crisis that we have as a country. If you add up everything that Congress has done and in coordination with the president, in a bipartisan fashion, the first few phases of the coronavirus relief, if you add it all up, it's almost $10 trillion. When you add up everything that was done for the Paycheck Protection Program, which has been such a vital lifeline for so many of us, so many of our small businesses in Louisiana and every state, if you add in the economic disaster loans that were added into that, if you add in the stimulus checks that went to every family and individual, all that together, and in addition to that, what the Federal Reserve has done with adding liquidity into the economy, you're talking about $10 trillion. It's a staggering number to think about. It is by far the largest relief that the federal government has ever engaged in for any measure or any disaster in history, and yet it's gone on much longer now than anybody had hoped or anticipated. Mm-hmm. When we passed the original CARES Act back in late March, it was anticipated this would be an 8-week event. But as we know, it's drug on much, much longer than that. And so people are really hurting. So the president knows that, the leaders of both parties in the House and the Senate know that, and there were negotiations going on all the way into the weekend. It fell apart really on Friday night, and the president decided to act unilaterally. Now, because of the constitutional boundaries of Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 of the Constitution, we do have separation of powers, and the executive only has so much authority. Some of what he's done is controversial. There's a debate ongoing. We're waiting to see if there's going to be any litigation over it to challenge it. But what he did was take some pretty decisive action. So here's a list of just the 4 primary things that I think will be top of everyone's mind. The payroll tax deferral. Now, what he's done now is the executive doesn't have the authority really to change the law on payroll tax. He can't make it go away for any period of time because it's a function of Congress. What he can do under the emergency powers and everything else he has under the pandemic, many would argue, is that he can defer the collection of them. So he's pushed off the collection for September through the end of December of payroll taxes for anyone who makes $100,000 or less per year. Now, it's up to each employer to do that and make the decision to take advantage of that. And some of the critics have said, well, it's just a deferral. Does that mean a big bill comes due at the end of the year? Well, the president's response is, if he's reelected, he'll make it a top priority to forgive all of that. So that his intention is, and I'm sure the Republicans in Congress at least, the intention is to make that a total forgiveness of those payroll taxes for that period. So we'll have to see. But he with a stroke of a pen, he did that. He also added housing relief. As you know, the eviction moratorium under the CARES Act expired, you may know, July 24th. And so that puts a lot of people in a bind that they're not able to make the rent, and they're pending foreclosure and eviction for notes and rent that's been past due. But we also know that property owners and landlords and lessors are in a real bind as well, because they've still got to make their notes, right? So it's a real quandary. So what the president's done is his executive order doesn't extend the federal eviction moratorium, but it orders HHS and the CDC to consider whether the another moratorium is necessary to combat the pandemic. And we know, for example, that COVID spreads pretty rapidly in homeless shelter, right? And so there's an incentive, you would think, for the federal government to make sure we don't crowd those facilities, because obviously people are in much closer proximity than they would be in their own apartments or homes. And so that's another thing he did. He added enhanced unemployment benefits. You know that the big debate we've had, and many of our small business owners are deeply concerned about the fact that we added in this extra $600 a week, as everyone now knows, under the CARES Act. It was done pretty hastily. It was done kind of, they sort of, you could argue they pick the number at random. Maybe it was a national average. But we know in Louisiana, prior to this, you could only collect $247 a week. Well, we added $600 on top of that. So many people in our state actually got a pay raise to be unemployed. A lot of people did, and it created, the critics say, and many of us are concerned, it created a disincentive for people to get back to work. So now in our district, I've been told by many small business owners that they're deeply frustrated because they want to get back to work, they want to reopen, they want to get back to some sense of normalcy, but they're not able to entice their employees to come back because they have this extra benefit. And so both sides have been wrangling over that. The president decided to sort of split the baby, so to speak, and he put it at $400. And so what that would do is he extends it, I think, for until December 6th. I'm looking at the date, December 6th. It's $400, and he's ordered the states to pay 25% of that. So for each $400 weekly payment that goes out, Louisiana would be on the hook for $100 per week. He is using the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund, which currently has $70 billion in reserve, and he's only authorized use of that up to $45 billion. So when it hits a certain amount, then all this will cut off. But the estimate is that might get a lot of people through December 6th, and that's some sort of compromise. Last thing, student loan relief. This is a big thing. Part of the executive order, the president defers collection of student loans through the end of the year until January 1. And he makes that no interest will accrue on that debt during that time. So that'll help a lot of people as well. So that's kind of the executive order in a nutshell. Here's the good news. I think today, about 2 hours ago, Secretary Mnuchin at Treasury said that the White House is still very much willing to negotiate. They want Schumer and Pelosi and company to come back to the table. And if they do, then everyone has their fingers crossed that some meaningful resolution of all this can be done. Maybe we can avoid litigation. Maybe we can get it done. Now, you know, the Republican side of this, just to give you our side, is McConnell's bill, the HEAL Act, started at $1 trillion. Pelosi's package started at $3 trillion, right? the idea that we're even talking about trillions with a T is sort of, to me, just really a big thing to kind of wrap your mind around. We're talking about so much money, and all this, of course, is deficit spending. I mean, almost all of it. So it's a real concern for us long term. But the McConnell bill would add another round of PPP. We would call it PPP 2.0. In his proposal, businesses with fewer than 300 employees would have an opportunity to go back for a second PPP loan or grant if you can show that your revenues are around 50% as compared to last year. So there is some sort of litmus test there, but that would be, I know, a big thing for a lot of people. There's health funding in it, $16 billion for testing, $16 billion for the National Institutes of Health, and $3 billion for the CDC for research and further response to the virus. There's liability protections, which is a big thing that we've been fighting for businesses and schools and churches and nonprofits. Everybody who follows the rules and the safety guidelines, we want to make sure they're not subject to lawsuits stemming from the coronavirus. It's the only way to give anybody the sense of confidence they need to really open the doors and get back to business. And then school funding, there's $70 billion. This is the Senate Republican plan, $70 billion to facilitate the safe reopening of K-12 schools. We've already started that in many of our districts in Louisiana, as you all know, and some of our private schools as well. But that would be $29 billion of that would go to, $70 billion would go to K through 12 and $29 billion would go to higher education. And then finally, the tweaks to the unemployment benefits. Under the Senate's proposal is different than the president. States would be required to administer unemployment benefits that max out at 70% of a person's former pay. That's the idea there, is that unemployment was never meant to give someone a pay raise. It wasn't even intended to fully compensate or fully match someone's prior income level. It was meant to be a temporary safety net. And so the fact that we're paying out so much money and adding so much to the federal debt has been a great concern for a lot of people, and that is the Senate's proposal. So that's where we are right now. The negotiations will continue, and hopefully, in good faith, both the parties will come back to the table, and we'll see what shakes out. In the meantime, we're all pending a vote, return back to Capitol Hill at any moment that we're called. I can participate now because I'm out of quarantine, but we really do need to go back and get this done for the people. And I think rank and file, all members probably on both sides of the aisle are anxious to get that done because it's the right thing to do and the country needs it. So let me yield back, Lisa, for questions or thoughts or concerns or anything anybody has on any topic, for this or any other.
Oh, thank you, Congressman, and thank you again. And even though your bandwidth was going a little bit in and out, we heard just about every single word, about 99% of what you said, just to let you know. So it was great information, and really appreciate that. As a reminder to our participants, if you have a question, please put that in the chat box. If you have something specific that you'd like to ask of the Congressman, he's got about 15 more minutes with us as he has additional engagements. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can put your questions in the comments. Congressman, one question that I do have that we have been paying attention to at the state level when it comes to the unemployment benefits, and so many folks filing for unemployment. You know, the governor has been talking about it many times in his press conferences about our Louisiana State Trust Fund, and that we're probably, I would assume now, at about 4 weeks left, because 2 weeks ago it was 6 weeks left remaining in that fund, but it could, as money trickles in, it goes a little bit further. But now with the president's executive order and asking the states to help pay for part of this $400 that he's proposed as an extension, I know we're still going to have a challenge at the state level for the state of Louisiana, and the governor has written letters to you all and to the president asking for some assistance at a state level to keep that trust fund solvent. Do you have any insight to any of that you can share with us?
Well, look, I know that Louisiana is among several states that are in pretty dire straits with all this. I mean, just for reference, Governor Cuomo in New York sent a request for funding to the federal government, $60 billion to bail out his state and some of their shortfalls and needs and all that. The need is overwhelming, but you know, there is a function for each state to participate in, and it's just a frustrating thing all the way around. I mean, there are no easy answers to this, which is why the negotiation was so tense and drug on for so long.
Right.
But you know, the idea that it could just print $3 trillion new dollars and drop it out of helicopters to try to solve some of these problems, to us is not the right approach. That's why the Republican side of this, the White House in their negotiation, Mark Meadows, my former colleague in the House as chief staff, and Mnuchin were leading it, is they're trying to make very efficient, effective investments, like, you know, putting more money into the Paycheck Protection Program. We know is a good investment because that works. We know that there is some additional money needed for this unemployment benefit, but the problem is, how do you fix and target the right amount and make sure that people are not gaming the system? Because we know for a fact that that's happening.
Right.
The implementation of that is the problem, because some states are not set up to be able to do this graduated scale where you actually determine it on an individual basis what someone would be eligible for. So for example, the Senate Republican version says you would only get 70% of your income you would be eligible for, to give you some incentive to go back to work. But the software in some of these states is not up to date. They can just print one amount of check for everybody and mail it out, but they don't have the functionality to be able to do the math on an individual basis. And that's one of the challenges for implementation. So it's a real crisis in Louisiana and other states, and there are no easy answers. And that's the long and short of it.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much, Congressman. And and of course, for the business community, that's it's top of mind for us, because if we do not find a way to maintain that trust fund, which is, as you said, is not unique to Louisiana only, then we may see some surcharges or what have you to the business community. So it really, once again, that saying of we're all in this together, because you can only from the federal level continue to print so much money, or bond it or provide it for assistance, and then when you bring it all the way down to the local level, there's only so much too that businesses can do that have tried and have worked very, very hard to remain solvent during this epidemic. And so we're all in this together in this unforeseen situation that we've not been through in many, many years. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes. So we have some questions just to reconfirm about the student loan deferral. Can you just review that again? The student loan deferral, has that been extended through December 31st?
That's right. The executive order defers student loan payments until January 1. So no interest accrues on debt during that time, and you don't, if you choose not to make a payment through that time, there's no penalty for that. So that will be a big relief for a lot of people.
Okay, great. All right. Let's see if there's any additional questions here. Okay, so I guess what would be our next steps, Congressman, before we let you go? Any words of wisdom on engagement from the business community? Do we need to be we're talking to you, but do we need to be talking to all of the other congressional delegates at the federal level, or elected officials at the state level, or is everyone inundated with those phone calls and you all know what's going on? I mean, I know you don't know all the answers, but I mean, what do you need from us?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa, you know that I'm always the first to say when there's further engagement that would be useful, that we ought to do it. And I'll send you the clarion call. But at this point right now, I genuinely do feel that everybody at the federal and state level, everybody in these elected positions, they know what the problem is. They know the level of angst. We've all heard it daily, hourly, by people who are down in the trenches, really just struggling to keep their businesses open and keep their employees on the payroll. And this is an unprecedented challenge that we're facing together. What you said is exactly right. We're all in this. This should not be a partisan thing. It should not be, people should not be using this for political purposes. It's shameful when anyone tries to do that. We have to we have to shoot with a laser, a rifle. We're laser focused on this right now to solve these problems and not just do this broad-based stuff. I mean, you know, I don't want to be partisan, but I'm telling you that the original proposal that Pelosi put on the table had release of inmates and marijuana funding, all this kind of just crazy stuff that has nothing whatsoever to do with CARES Act. Those are issues that we should be able to debate and handle later. Right now, we have got to focus on the ball, and the stakes are so high. I mean, in Louisiana, I mean, this is what we all know. Prior to the crisis in the oil and gas market that we all have suffered through this year, in late March, Wallet Hub, which is one of the groups that does the national metrics, that compared all 50 states, and they listed Louisiana as the #1 state that would have the most difficult time recovering from the pandemic once it was over. That was in the early spring, March, I think, early April maybe. That was before everything happened in the oil and gas market. So we know the steep hill that we have to climb, and we need everybody working together and pushing in the same direction, and not trying to weaponize anything for political purposes. And but all that said, if I thought their advocacy from our business leaders would be instrumental here, I would certainly be asking you and requesting that be done. But I think I'm very confident everybody knows what the need is. The question is, what answer are we going to provide, and what compromise are we going to come to make that happen? So maybe it's a prayer request, that wisdom and steady minds prevail, so we can get through this.
Yes, sir. We do have a question that while you and I were talking about that has arisen, and you're obviously very, very familiar that we are a defense community and with home to Barksdale Air Force Base. And so we have a question here. The National Defense Authorization Act took unemployment benefits off the table for GI Bill students. Will the job losses of COVID-19 waive this law so veteran students going to school and working can use unemployment benefits while using their GI Bill? Congressman, were you able to hear me?
I lost the last part. Say that last sentence or two again.
It says, will the job losses of COVID-19 waive this law so veteran students going to school and working can use unemployment benefits while using their GI Bill?
I certainly hope so. I don't know if there's a solution, a compromise that's been made on that yet. I know it's been discussed. It's a real problem for a lot of people, obviously. And I think that's a possibility, but that's one of the things I think that was on the table in this big negotiation over the weekend. It was not covered in the president's executive order, but it's one of those detail items that we hope that can be resolved. And I am optimistic. I just want y'all to know, I do think that there is going to be a compromise that's made. I hope it's on favorable enough terms. I think both sides need to give a little and come to the middle and get this done, because there's a lot of people in situations just like this that need the assistance. And there's good ideas on the table, but the executive order just, the president doesn't have the constitutional authority to handle all those things. And so we got to get Congress to do its job. So I'm optimistic. Hopefully that's one of the things that can be covered in it.
Thank you, Congressman. Well, that's all that we have for today. We really appreciate your time, Congressman Mike Johnson, and for giving us an update on Phase 4, what update there is to be given, because it is changing by the hour, by the day, by the hour, and then with the executive order that came over the weekend. We will just continue to stay tuned in to our trusted media outlets, and to the newsletters coming from our congressional delegation to keep us up to date on what's happening. And then, of course, to our listeners out there, we just want to remind you that if you do have questions specifically related, you can call the chamber here. You can call us here at the Bossier Chamber of Commerce, and we can get those questions to our congressional delegation. And plus, the district offices are here, and they're always willing to assist and to help if there's anything specific for your business and your industry. So with that, Congressman Mike Johnson, you can have the last word.
Yeah, thanks. I'm talking to you. Sorry about the internet coverage. That's unusual. I don't know what's happening here, but I'm at the Bean Office Park right now. I'm in my office here, Bossier, on 220, right next to the Wilson Knighton to the hospital there, and the little driving range right there on Hospital Drive. Everybody knows where that is. Drop by here. We got a full staff all the time. They're anxious to help. And go to the website at mikejohnson.house.gov, because that's got all the contact numbers for all of our offices in the district and the Washington office. And call us anytime, any hour. We want to help. But there's all sorts of issues pending right now for everybody. And my staff's been doing an incredible job. So, Lisa, thanks again for the opportunity. Thanks to all of you for supporting the Bossier Chamber. I've said this many times over this year, this crazy cycle valley we're going through as a country together, that the Chambers of Commerce are just vitally important right now. Their function, you might be able to argue, has never been more important than it is right now, to be able to help everybody rebound and get back to some sense of normalcy and to save our businesses. So keep plugging away. We're going to do everything we can to help you guys, and we want to be here as a resource for you. So God bless, and we'll see everybody soon.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Wear your mask, social distance, and wash your hands. Have a great day.